Before I start, I want to ask everybody to think about something that you're grateful for. It can be something big that's going on in your life. It can be something simple, like I'm grateful for the clothes that I have on my back. I'm grateful for the food that I had today. I'm grateful for this opportunity to come out and talk about something that I'm passionate about with people that I resonate with in a certain way. So normally before, do you have a question, ma'am? You're thankful for church. Very good. Who else is thankful for church? Yeah, wonderful. When we think of things that we're grateful for, it helps put us in a good emotional vibration. Sometimes the stresses of life will make us operate from a place of our brain that is a place where stress and fear and anxiety come from. And simply thinking of something that we're grateful for helps us come back to the better thinking part of our brain and tap into better emotions. So it's a really effective way not only to get us in a good vibration or a good mental state, but a really effective way to turn on parts of our brain that help us connect and help us hear a message and help us be present. So I like to start not only my day by thinking of things that I'm grateful for, but anytime I do a presentation, I like to ask people to think of things that they're grateful for that same reason. Normally, before I talk in front of a group, I would put on some fancy shoes, maybe a nice shirt and a jacket, just so I could hide myself or hide who I really am, I guess, behind the maybe the uniform that people might expect somebody to wear. And as I was preparing for today, I said, you know what? If I was out if I was out doing anything else, I'd be wearing flip-flops. I might not even have a collared shirt on. So if you were to see me away from here, that's how I would be. And I figured if there's any audience that would want me to show up as authentically as myself as I could, it would be this audience. So instead of putting on the shoes, I figured, you know what? This is who I am. So as we should all show up in life every day. So I want to talk a little bit about what I'm most passionate about and this common thread, ideal and philosophy that I really live my life by. But to do so, I need to kind of go back a little bit and share some of my backstory to help you understand how I came to this understanding and how I came to knowing this common thread that we'll talk about. So back in 2013, I was still active duty in the Marine Corps. And I left on my most recent deployment to Afghanistan. I had the great pleasure of being a C-130 pilot in the Marines, so I got to fly some big cargo planes, work with some great people. The work was very fascinating. It was very fulfilling. It was something that I was proud to do and very much enjoyed doing it. I think flying a plane, I often joke, is the most fun that you can have, doing something morally and ethically and without the aid of chemicals. But the way that you feel is just so amazing when you're flying around in a plane. So I really love the work. I was at a difficult time in my life and had some things I was reflecting on. So when I went away on deployment, it really gave me some space from my normal day-to-day routine and gave me an opportunity to really reflect on and search for meaning and search for answers to things that had been troubling me. So I did a lot of thinking while I was over in Afghanistan for 6 months. And one thing that I thought about a lot was, of all things, was the enemy. And not the enemy as a whole, not the enemy, the Taliban or Al-Qaeda or whoever it was that we were fighting, but the individual enemy. And I used to ponder or wonder, I guess Sun Tzu recommends that we study the enemy and we get to know the enemy as well as ourselves. So I really wanted to know what his individual motives were. What was it that drove the enemy to take up arms and to fight against us? And when I thought about it from the individual enemy's perspective, I thought, I realized that some of them had lost their jobs, some of them had no other means to support themselves, some of them felt threatened because they thought if they didn't take up arms against this enemy force that was there, that somebody might commit harm to their family. So a lot of them were doing it out of fear. Some were doing it because they wanted to serve a cause that was greater than themselves. Some of them needed the employment. Some of them just wanted to care for their family and take care of their obligations and do the best that they could with what they had and what they knew was available. And I started reflecting on, some of the reasons that Americans joined the military. Our country, our fighting force, they're at war to try to spread democracy. They're at war to try to stabilize nations and prevent violence against people who've been oppressed. But the individual Marine, the soldier who signs up, that's not really why he's doing it necessarily. Some do it they want to earn money for college. They want an opportunity to travel. They want an opportunity to bond with other people like themselves, to serve a cause greater than themselves, to provide for their family. And when I thought about it, I realized a lot of the same reasons that we were taking up arms against an enemy force was the same reason that they were when you looked at the individual level. I realized that we all have the same basic human needs, the same basic wants, the same insecurities, the same fears, and the same desire to be a part of something, to feel a sense of purpose and meaning. And through this experience, I really came to the conclusion and the understanding, what I really believe is that whoever we are, whatever we do, however we act, that we're simply a product of, it's not a nature or nurture question, I think it's a combination of the two. We're simply a product of where we started out in life, where we were born, the family that we were born into, the environment, the circumstances that we were born into, which would be our nature. And we're also influenced heavily by all the experiences that we've had from that time through our life. So I don't think that it's necessarily a nature or nurture. I think it's both. I think that we are who we are. We believe what we believe. We see things as we do because of a combination of our nature and our nurture. And I firmly believe that if I was the product of anybody else's nature and nurture, if I was born in the exact same position that they were, if I'd experienced the exact same experiences in my life, that I would be very similar to them. If I'd experienced my entire life through the lens of their perspective, facing the challenges, facing the struggles, that I would have those same insecurities, or those same ideals, or those same beliefs. While I was going through this, one of the things I was reflecting on, realizing the similarities between myself and these other people that were involved, the enemy that we were fighting against, realizing that we had many more similarities really than points of divide. There were a lot more at the human nature, at the human level. There were a lot more things that united us than divided us. Well, one concept or philosophy that I'd also come across in some of the reading I was doing is this philosophy of inherent simplicity. And inherent simplicity simply says that if you look at every observed effect that we see in the world, and you trace those observed effects back to their cause, and you continue that process, that eventually everything will converge to one root cause. So we see this in engineering, we see this in business when we do a root cause analysis. We try to look at all observed effects and trace it back to one root cause. So I began to ponder, I was thinking, if there's so many things that unite me or make me similar to these other people that normally we think we are very different from. If there's a lot of things that unite us or that are similar between us, I wondered if I could go back and do some kind of inherent simplicity analysis or root cause analysis and find just one common thing that united us, one common thing that really tied us together at the core, at the fundamental level, that was something that really bonded together all of humanity. Well, I didn't get to that conclusion while I was in Afghanistan, and when I came home from Afghanistan in August of 2013, I feel like I left one war that was abroad and came home in many ways to a war that was going on in my own life. I came home to a marriage that was falling apart. I came home to challenges and stresses in the job that I hadn't faced before. I'd been in the Marine Corps for about 13 years at this point and was tired of deploying. I'd been deployed for 2 of my daughter's first 4 years of life. So I was getting worn out and exhausted with this pace of life or this pace of deployment. And I wasn't sure I could do it for another 6 years and reach the 20-year retirement that I've been striving for. I also wasn't sure what I wanted to do after the Marine Corps. I poured so much time and energy into my job as a Marine, into my job as a pilot, I never really thought about what it might be that I want to pursue after the Marine Corps. And I realized that 5 or 6 years isn't really that long if you're trying to make a huge change. So that was weighing on my mind. Fortunately, this message came to me, as messages often do. We don't know where they might come from next. Mine came from a YouTube video that I happened to see of an author named Cami Walker, who was being interviewed about a book that she'd recently written. And the book was called 29 Gifts. And in the book, she talks about how she used charity or giving of gifts or giving of herself to other people in order to deal with the diagnosis of MS that she had recently received and that she was suffering with. And she said that for 29 days, she spent time doing something for somebody else. And in doing so, she was able to alleviate a lot of the pain and the ailments that she had from her disease. So I looked at my own life and I thought, if it could work miracles for her with her problems that she was facing, I'm sure my self-created, the stressors in my own life and the problems I was facing, I thought, maybe I'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens. So I started experimenting with charity. Now, when I think of charity or when I talk about charity, I don't mean making a donation to a charitable cause, although that's one thing that we can do. I mean any time we do something, we commit an act, we do something for the benefit of another person. Whether it's running to open a door for somebody who's walking into a store, whether it's calling a friend and just saying like, hey, you're important to me, I appreciate you, it means a lot to have you in my life. Whether we just smile at a stranger when we pass them on the street. Anytime we commit an act or do something with the thought of the benefit of another person in mind, I think of that as charity. Because we're committing an act ourselves that we know will benefit another person. And as I experimented with charity and with this deliberate acts of service, making it a habit every day to do something for another person, whether it was send an email to somebody I'd worked with, whether it was make a small donation to a charity that I like to support, or whether it was buying a small gift for a friend and, an extra cup of coffee and hand delivering it to a friend just to say, hey, I was thinking about you and, I appreciate you. I'd like you to have this gift that I bought for just a few dollars. Sometimes those simple gestures can really make a huge difference or an impact in other people's lives when we take the time to share our time and to just express the fact that we were thinking of somebody. As I committed these deliberate acts, I noticed some really interesting things that I hadn't really realized about service or about charity before. One of the things is that it helped bring a lot of clarity and perspective to my own life. Some of the challenges and struggles that I were facing, I didn't feel particularly abundant at the time. I didn't feel like I had all the money that I could use. Does anybody feel like they have all the money in their life that they could effectively use? Well, one day I was having a pretty bad day, and I was pondering this as I was walking through the aisles in Walmart. And I stopped right in the middle of the aisle, and I remember this. I was looking around, and I was thinking about some of the work that I'd done supporting a charity that provides water to people in need. And we had funded some projects to provide wells or clean, reliable source of drinking water to people in Africa that didn't have access to clean drinking water. And water is such a fundamental need. If you don't have access to clean drinking water, nothing else really matters. I mean, any health benefits that you might have, like the diseases that you might suffer from if you didn't have medical care or a better education or a better job, isn't really going to matter if you don't have the most fundamental need of clean drinking water. And as I was walking through Walmart feeling a little bad for myself because I was having a bad day, I thought, everything that I need and many of the things that I want are within arm's reach of me. And even though I don't feel like I have a lot of money in my pocket, I at least have enough money to buy the things that I need and take care of myself and my daughter. So I realized I gained a lot of perspective. Because of that service that I'd done before, it allowed me to have perspective on the struggles or the challenges in my own life. I also noticed that when I did things for other people, it helped give me a sense of control. There were many things in my life I felt that were out of control. But when I could think of somebody, when I could buy Angelina a cup of coffee and bring it over to the theater and just say I was thinking about it, that's something that I can control. That's something that I can do. So it helped me gain a greater sense of control. Well, after doing this for a while and really reflecting on what I thought of or how I conceptualize an act of charity or service, anything that we do for the benefit of another person, I realized that, to me, I believe charity can be thought of as active gratitude. So when we have an emotion of gratitude, when we think of things that we're grateful for, that's an emotion that's inside of us that makes us feel good. But if that gratitude in us, which is passive, if we can do something and it inspires us to commit an action for the benefit of another person, then it becomes active. So one way to think of charity is that it's active gratitude. We're acting out the gratitude that we have for the blessings that are in our life. Another way to think of it is as kinetic love. Similarly, when we're warm and we feel those warm emotions and we're resonating in a vibration of love and we're feeling the great feelings of joy, again, it's got potential to inspire us to do things. It's got the potential to empower us to do things. But when we commit an act and we take that love that's within us that has potential and we engage in an action, well, then it becomes kinetic. Then that flow of love gets to flow through us and out to the world that's around us. After experimenting with charity for a good period of time, I came to the realization that charity and the acts and the benefits that we get really come down to three different fundamental ways that we benefit. So one way, when we do something kind or generous for another person, we benefit emotionally. And there's some studies that show that when we do something out of service, when we do something for somebody else, it releases those feel-good hormones. We all know that it feels good when we do something, but it actually releases hormones in our brain, the same dopamine and oxytocin and other things that make us feel good. And that has emotional benefits of increasing our self-esteem, for people that serve other people. It helps reduce the feelings of stress. And some people have reported feelings of depression decreasing when they commit actions of service for other people. And those that commit actions of service regularly just generally feel happier. They report that they feel happier and more joyful and more fulfilled in their own life. There's one study where they did an MRI of people's brains when they were thinking of or remembering an act of service that they had done. And they showed that the same part of their brain that is stimulated, the mesolimbic system, the same part of the human brain that's stimulated when we consume drugs or when we consume foods, the chemicals that enter our body that make us feel a certain way and a certain euphoria, they saw that the same part of the brain was stimulated when somebody committed an act of service or gratitude or generosity or did something for another person. And there's actually a term that helper's high, which is the euphoria that you feel when you continually do things in service or you do things in service over a long period of time. But this is something that we all experience. Anytime we do something for another person, we experience these emotional benefits. Another thing that we all do is we all have physiological benefits. Those same hormones that make us feel better emotionally also have physiological responses on our brains or from our brains on our body. One thing is that the oxytocin that's released helps fight against cortisol, which is released in our body. When we're in that stress state, when we're in that fight or flight state, when all the many things that happen around us stimulate that reaction system in our brain, that releases cortisol, which is good because it helps us perform very good and very effectively at the time. It helps us either get away from the situation or do something to protect ourselves if we had to. But overstimulation and too much of that cortisol in our body begins to age us. It begins to wear us down. It begins to defeat our immune system. So when we commit an act of service or generosity for another person, it actually releases oxytocin that reduces those negative effects of the cortisol that's in our body. There was one study that showed, it was a Harvard study that showed really how effective charity and service and how empowering and how impactful it is in our life. They took a group of students at Harvard and they watched a 50-minute video of Mother Teresa performing acts of taking care of children and serving those that were in need. And after watching this 50-minute video of other people committing acts of service, they then took saliva samples of the students and they saw an improved immune response in those students' bodies. So their saliva, their first line of defense against infection, was actually improved just by watching somebody else commit an act of service for others. So that's how powerful and how significant it can be to serve other people. There was also one study where they correlated the health benefits of people that committed regular acts of service and charity. Those that volunteered or those that did things for other people on a regular basis. Well, they showed a correlation between regular volunteerism and a 20% reduction in major illness and a 44% reduction in early death in the group that they studied. And then WebMD correlated that 20% reduction in major illness and a 44% reduction in early death. They said that's the same effect that you would have if you exercise regularly 4 times a week. So you exercise an hour a day 4 times a week or regularly volunteer, you'll have the same health benefits over a long period of time. Now, I'm not suggesting that anybody skip their workout, but if you had to, 1 Million Goal is the name of my nonprofit. We've got a great website you can go to if you want to catch up. But so emotionally, physiologically, no matter who you are, you benefit when you do something for another person. And then I realized and saw the correlations with the spiritual benefit that we get. Now, spirituality, that answers the question for many of us: where do we find meaning? How do we fall into, what's our role in this universe and in this life? How do we find purpose? How do we guide our life? Where do we find values and what influences our beliefs? And most people find their spirituality through a recognized or a practiced religion. So with this thought in mind about charity, I went and investigated and I looked at how different religions saw or valued charity and service. And I saw in 1 Peter 4:8 in the New Testament it says, "And above all things, have fervent charity among yourself, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins." I have a friend who's Mormon, so I looked in the Book of Mormon, and in Alma 7:24 it says, "And see that ye have faith, hope, and charity, and then you will always abound in good works." Islam, they teach in the Quran, it says, "Be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity." Hinduism, they teach that there's 3 cardinal virtues that everybody should strive for, and they are self-restraint, compassion, and charity. The Buddhist philosophy, religious philosophy, says there's 3 perfections that you should strive for. The first one is called dana parami, or parimi, and it's defined as generosity and giving of oneself. Judaism says that charity is the highest commandment and alone is equal to all other commandments combined. And the Taoists say that the sage does not accumulate for himself. The more he does possess of his own, the more he gives to other people. Now, if you do a quick Wikipedia search, you'll see there's 4,400 recognized religions around the world. But just these ones that I've mentioned cover 6 of the 7 billion people on the planet. And I wasn't a statistics major in college, but I'm pretty comfortable with 6 out of 7 billion people that I can come to the safe conclusion that no matter what your spiritual or religious beliefs are, you benefit spiritually. And you walk more closely with your Creator or with your God when you commit an act of service or charity. I wanted to do a reading, and I'm so passionate about this, I could talk all day long, so I figured if I reverted to some text that I'd written, I could kind of summarize this most effectively, and we could all eat dinner tonight. But by saying that, I'm more than happy to hang out, and I'll talk about this as long as you like. Give me a flip chart. I'll draw up some physics diagrams about how love affects the world around us. But on this topic of the common thread, I'm reading from it's a manuscript draft of the book called The Common Thread. And it says, after reflecting on the many ways that service and charity benefit my life, I've come to the conclusion that I was put here on earth and given life for one purpose, which is to give of myself through my work and serving others. But I don't think this purpose applies just to me. These benefits of selflessness and of giving apply to everyone. Every human being, no matter who you are or where you are, I feel that the meaning of life for everyone is to serve other people in some way, and to help make a positive difference in the world by serving other people. Charity, by any other name or by its name, is a common thread that bonds together all of humanity. When I was abroad and I was thinking that maybe there was some inherent simplicity, maybe there was one thing that did unite all of humanity. That's what it was. It's this common thread of service and charity. It's a universal truth that the spread of love and compassion through action benefits every person on the planet, emotionally, physiologically, and spiritually. No matter your status or your place on the socioeconomic ladder, you'll experience an emotional benefit when you serve another. It doesn't matter what your country of origin is, you will experience health benefits when you act selflessly. Whether you're a man or a woman of strong faith, or if you have no religious faith in your heart, you'll walk more closely with God and receive favor from your Creator spiritually when you give of your blessings to serve those that are in need. Now, God created the planet where now more than 7 billion people roam. And I believe that God created man and woman to be His hands here on earth. It's my belief that we're here to be conduits of God's love and to do God's work here on earth by serving others. We live in a world that's divided by hundreds of countries, thousands of religions, and many opposing political and philosophic views. It's a world that's full of hatred, of pain, of fear, and of suffering in many forms. But I believe that God gave us the cure to end all this suffering. A cure that crosses all national borders. It's validated by every religion, and it provides the same spiritual, emotional, and physiological benefits to all of humanity, regardless of race, creed, color, or gender. And that cure is the thread that wraps each of us 7 billion people of the planet together in one cloth. It's that common thread. The cure is service. It's active demonstration of our gratitude. It's the spreading of the love of God, not through words or beliefs or through proclamations, but through acts of service for the sake of making a difference in the lives of other people. All lives. As humans, we too often focus on the many characteristics that divide us, the things that make us different from one another. But to cure the ailments of the world, we need only focus our energy and our attention on one thing, that common thread of charity, of service, or that kinetic spread of love to help everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to